So in true ADHD fashion, I've already recorded this video. And then I went to, put the footage on the server and ended up deleting all of it. So I'm recording it again. Also in true ADHD fashion, I went to sit down and record this video and forgot my orange. So yeah. Okay, what are we talking about this video? We're talking about task initiation, which is why I needed the orange. Task initiation is basically just starting to do something. And one of the problems we have as ADHDers is that when we sit down to do something, our brains don't work on priority, they work on interest. And if we're not interested in doing that thing, it's really hard to get started. Sometimes it's practically impossible unless we do something to help ourselves out. But before we get into that, I need your help. I'm not sure that Caveman Blueprint is really the right name for this particular channel since we talk about ADHD. I don't know, maybe it is. What do you think about that? Put it in the comments. If you've got a better name, yeah, put it down there. Totally open to new ideas. Back to task initiation. There really is no silver bullet, and the reason why is because there's so many causes of why we can't get started on things. Let me give you an example. Not that we need one. You've got something you need to do with the computer. And so you sit down and stare at a screen and you want to get started and you know it's a priority, but for some reason you just can't make yourself do it. Now here are some possible reasons of why you might not be able to get started. Maybe you can't get started because you're overwhelmed or you're emotionally flooded. Something happened, you got into an argument, or you can't stop thinking about, what somebody said a few days ago. Maybe you have pretty strong perfectionistic tendencies, and so you can't make yourself do it because you know it's not going to be perfect when you're done. Maybe this is something you know is important, but you're not really interested in doing it. Maybe you don't know where to start. Or maybe there's no urgency behind doing this. You can always put it off till tomorrow perpetually because there's no deadline. Or there's no challenge in it. Or maybe there's too much challenge. So you can see there's a lot of different reasons on why we might not be able to start a task, which is why there really is no silver bullet. But there is a way to help ourselves with each of these things individually if you can figure out what the roadblock is, what's causing you to not be able to start, or what's keeping you from being able to start. And so as we accumulate these different ways of helping ourselves overcome these hurdles, we develop a toolbox, which is kind of the analogy everybody uses. But to go with more of the silver bullet theme, you kind of have a Gatling gun of silver bullets. So there's no one silver bullet, there's like 30 or 40 of them. I love that analogy. On to the parable of the orange. Incidentally, this video is brought to us by the American Fruit Association. I'm just kidding, they're not. Every day when I go to work, I take an orange with me, and over the course of months, I have peeled oranges and eaten oranges either as part of lunch or snack or whatever. And that worked for a little bit, and then it eventually got to the point where I stopped eating the oranges and I just bring them home, and so I was recycling the same orange but without eating it. Which is probably a good idea, because if you eat an orange and then you try and recycle it, that doesn't really work. Unless you're trying to fertilize an orange tree. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I like oranges. Eating the orange wasn't the problem. It was the peeling of the orange. My hands would get all messy and I'd have to clean off my pocket knife and all of those things. And it was just kind of a pain in the butt. And so I just kind of stopped eating oranges at work. But I like oranges. I wanted to eat them. I just couldn't get myself to do it. So what did I do? As I was putting my lunch together, I would take the orange and I would chop it up into slices and then stick it in a plastic bag. And this seems like kind of a no-brainer, except it illustrates our point today perfectly. A little bit of preparation lowers the cost for task initiation. And you know it's true because it rhymes. So going back to our example of doing something on the computer, how can we do a little bit of preparation that's going to help us overcome that cost for task initiation? If we're overwhelmed, break it down into the next smallest specific task. Something that's so stupidly small that doing it is kind of a no-brainer and takes almost no effort at all. For example, turn on the computer. That's a great one to start with, but make sure it's plugged in. Oh, and don't plan more than a few steps ahead, because if you try and plan out the whole thing, you're going to end up being right back in overwhelm again. So we just want to keep it, what's the next really small step to do? On to emotional flooding. If something has happened and you just can't stop thinking about it, someone said something nasty, or there's like a movie coming out that you really want to see, emotions are not truth. Think of them more like signposts. They're saying, hey, pay attention to this. This might be something that's important. That doesn't mean it's important, by the way. Emotions are really like a toddler that's running around, and they're trying to talk to you and tell you about all sorts of things. And so if you take 30 seconds and you sit down on the couch with the toddler and you let the toddler tell you everything the toddler has to say, then they'll move on. They'll go do something else. And emotions kind of respond the same way. When we fight against the emotion or when we ignore the emotion, they start screaming at us. And for those of us who are neurospicy, that scream is very, very loud. And so instead, just listen to the emotion. Listen to what it has to say. Recognize that it's a story. It's not necessarily the truth. And then let it go skipping away. And you can go into the kitchen and make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cut them into little shapes like dinosaurs. Okay, perfectionism. This is a really heavy topic. There's many different reasons why we can have perfectionistic tendencies. And at some point, I need to do a video just on perfectionism, because we can talk for hours about that. But in the scope of this video, just do tiny experiments. It's just an experiment. Experiments don't have to be perfect. You're doing an action, you're seeing what the result is. And that's a pretty good way to get started, because there's no pressure that the result has to be perfect. You just need a result. And in our case, that's getting started with something. So whatever the first action is, treat it like an experiment. Do that thing, see what happens. Okay, I need to start hurrying up this video. It's going to take forever. If you're not interested in something, we need to resparkleize. Add some bling. Find a way to make it interesting by making it new and shiny. If you don't know where to start to actually get going on the task, that's usually a problem of not knowing what the outcome is supposed to be. So sit down, spend a few minutes. What does done actually look like? If whatever you're doing isn't urgent and there's nothing really pushing you to get it done, and that's the problem of why you can't get started, give yourself a deadline and give yourself a reward if you meet that deadline. Like, hey, if I do this thing, I'm going to go grab an ice cream. And definitely not eat the frog. Sorry, that's a joke from a previous video. What if whatever you're doing isn't challenging, so it's not stimulating? Well, do it left-handed if you're originally right-handed, or do it backwards, or start at the bottom of the report and end up finishing at the top. Whatever you can think of to make it a bit more challenging. But what if it's too challenging? We can use AI to give us a starting point, but we have to be really careful there, because if we outsource our critical thinking, we'll lose it. You know that whole expression, if you don't use it, you lose it? Well, it's true. And the last thing we need to do as ADHDers is to actually lose our critical thinking ability. But when you use AI to get started on something and you create that starting point, then you go in and you make it your own. You rewrite it, you add detail, you point it in the right direction, and you get to keep your critical thinking ability and improve it, which is a good thing. And whatever you do, for the love of all that's holy, do not use AI to make decisions for you. We have a hard enough time making decisions ourselves. But when we stop making decisions, we lose the ability to do that. Sorry, I'm going down another rabbit hole. So there's lots of things we can do if we find out what's keeping us from starting the task. And if you find something weird that works for you, great, just go with it. For example, when I outline these videos, I have to start on a whiteboard. I start writing down my thoughts in a marker until I fill up the whiteboard, and it's kind of a small whiteboard, so that's fine. And then I have to move it over to a computer. But the beautiful thing is I can just continue on the computer and I don't have to use the whiteboard for the whole thing. So I just use it to help me get started. That's a perfect example of something for task initiation. And that's just something I found that works for me, kind of like the orange. So if this has helped you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper and maybe get some one-on-one help to address your specific issues, I'm currently putting together a waiting list for ADHD coaching. I'll put a link or an email or something in the description, and if you're interested, yeah, go check it out. But regardless, thanks for spending time with me today. I appreciate you, and I look forward to the next one where we engineer the crap out of ADHD.